Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the marketplace. Coming up, rating agency Fitch warns huge losses imposed on bondholders under the domestic debt exchange program has significantly weakened the banking sector's capitalization. Meantime, Bank of Ghana institutes measures to ensure soundness of financial system after a record 60 billion CD loss last year.
We need to recognize that we are putting in place steps and actions to ensure that we return back to positive levels.
Also coming up, a government inaugurates committee to ensure proper appropriation and preservation of the national purse.
This would be the first of its kind. Our focus is to make sure that all relevant stakeholders are brought on board so that it's a whole of government approach towards ensuring that the interests of all stakeholders are taken into consideration.
My name is Daryl. Kwawu. Thanks for being with us. Details coming up. Well, first up, rating agency Fitch has warned that the huge losses imposed on bondholders under the domestic debt exchange program has significantly weakened the banking sector's capitalization. According to the UK-based firm, the restructuring of outstanding sovereign debt and impending loan quality problems will add to capital pressures. There's more in this report.
Fitch considers solvency issues to be concentrated at the domestic banks. It said regional and foreign banks are better because of their strong buffers. The UK-based firm has earlier said that Ghanaian banks' capital was still weakening significantly as a result of Ghana's sovereign domestic debt restructuring. It further said, estimated that the country's current account deficit will narrow to 0.8% in relation to the size of the economy in 2023 from 2.1% in 2022. This is supported by suspension of external debt service and improved terms of trade. In 2024 and 2025, the capital account deficit, it said, should remain moderate. A reduced current account deficit together with international financial institutions' disbursement and external debt restructuring should enable accumulation of reserves over 2023 and 2025, reaching 2.8 months of current external payments by 2025.
Now, the Bank of Ghana has assured that the ability to perform its regulatory function has not been affected despite its challenging financial position. The regulator posted almost 61 billion CD loss last year, resulting in a negative equity for the bank. Meanwhile, the central bank says it has instituted structures which will ensure the soundness of the financial system is protected despite the current challenge. Dr. Philip Abredu-Otu is head of research at the Bank of Ghana.
We also need to recognize that we are putting in place steps and actions to ensure that we return back to positive levels. So some of the measures that we are putting in place is that we'll be retaining profits to build capital back up. We'll then be optimizing the Bank of Ghana's investment portfolio and operating cost measures to bolster efficiency. And then again, I think you said this at the beginning of your program, we will be making an assessment for the potential need for recapitalization support from the government in the medium term. Many central banks are recording same negative losses. So yes, but these central banks are also operating and they are also delivering on their mandate. So we can. The problem is that it should not be persistent, because the more persistent it gets, the more negative it gets on our balance sheet over a longer period of time, then credibility issues creep in. So there's a plan, there's an agenda to restore capital, but we need to bear in mind that the domestic debt exchange was the main factor that created the problem.
Well, joining me on Zoom is Senior Finance Lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Dr. Benjamin Amwa, to discuss the record losses posted by the Bank of Ghana. Good afternoon to you. So the Bank of Ghana says the losses were as a result of the domestic debt exchange program and loan impairments. Are these justified?
If you consider the current situation that we find ourselves in, talk about last year and this year and what has happened on the financial services sector, especially in relation to government issued securities that all the financial institutions participated in, then one can clearly justify that the low frequency, high impact events of the domestic debt exchange program has hugely contributed to the reported losses from Bank of Ghana. So based on that, and if you look at the portfolio of assets that Bank of Ghana was having, and the exposure that Bank of Ghana exposed itself to by participating in the treasury bond issued by Ministry of Finance, then clearly one can say that for last year, 2022, the DDEP has largely contributed to Bank of Ghana's poor performance. If you compare it to the year before, this was not Bank of Ghana's performance. So clearly one can conclude that the DDEP has indeed negatively impacted on Bank of Ghana.
Could the losses have been avoided?
That's a difficult one to say because, you see, the central bank participated in the bond issued by the Ministry of Finance, which was an indirect way of financing government activities. There was no problem until the exchange. And you see, this strategy used by central banks all over the world is to help the central bank to indirectly finance government activities, which leads to what you call a circular flow of funds. So the central bank then participates in this instrument, indirectly purchases them, releases funds to the treasury, and then during the period that the central bank holds the instrument, what actually happens is that the treasury, that is Ministry of Finance, then pays the central bank coupon. When the treasury pays the central bank coupon, the question then is who owns or who is the largest shareholder or the single shareholder of the central bank? It still goes back to the state, which is the government. So realize that within that space, and what is happening is that there's a circular flow of funds, where the funds then moves from the central bank through the purchase of instruments issued by the Treasury to Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance, with time, settles its indebtedness. That is, if only to settle it, the funds get to the central bank, and then the central bank again purchases the bonds. So there's a circular flow of funds within that space. But then the challenge is that it is true that in many instances, the treasuries around the world do not pay a bank because the government
Dr. Benjamin Amwa looks like he's frozen, but reacting to the 60 billion CD loss posted by the central bank in 2022. As you're told, this is historic. It has never happened in the history of the central bank. We're just getting his thoughts on as to whether this could have been avoided. Hopefully we get him back to continue the conversation. Meantime, government has inaugurated a medium-term revenue strategy steering committee to ensure proper appropriation and preservation of the national purse. The setup of the committee follows a mid-year budget review in a bid to deliver a revenue strategy that focuses on incentives towards sectors crucial for sustainable and inclusive growth. There's more in this report.
During the mid-year budget reading, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta mentioned that the Mutual Prosperity Dialogues would seek to facilitate the ease of doing business, to crowd in private, domestic and foreign investments. To reach an FDI target of $3 billion over the medium term, government implemented a medium-term revenue strategy. The Ministry of Finance has inaugurated a steering committee to oversee the strategy. George Winfield is Director of Revenue Policy Division at the Ministry of Finance.
This would be the first of its kind. Our focus is to make sure that all relevant stakeholders are brought on board so that it's a whole of government approach towards ensuring that the interests of all stakeholders are taken into consideration before the implementation. I mean, we are supposed to complete the development of this document by end of September. Already we have begun engaging some stakeholders. We have sent letters to some stakeholders for their inputs and so on, and we continue engaging. And so the only thing I will say is that it's a great opportunity for the general public to continue engaging with us, seize the opportunity to make their inputs, so that at the end of the development of the document, all their interests would have been brought on board.
Director General of the National Development Planning Commission, Kojo Esim Abrampa, is optimistic the Medium-Term Revenue Strategy Steering Committee will increase revenue mobilization and ease the pressure of the Ministry of Finance.
This is very, very important. Important in the sense that we always quote figures that we are far behind our African peers in terms of revenue mobilization. And then when you come to the middle income peers, we are even far below. 13% of our GDP, that's what we're able to collect. Compared to African peers, who are almost all of them are above 17%, heading towards 20%. And we are supposed, as a middle income country, to be with our peers, which are above 25%. But we are now wallowing at 13%. I think it's quite disheartening, and it brings a lot of pressure on decision making around resources that we have, because the needs that we are demanding is at the middle income level, whilst we are mobilizing revenue even far below least developing countries. And this is a challenge. It puts a lot of pressure on the Minister of Finance in being able to prioritize and meet the needs of the country, particularly in providing public services.
The Medium-Term Revenue Strategy Steering Committee was urged to work closely with the Ghana Investment Promotion Center and the various members of the Growth Strategy team to ensure reaching the FDI targets over the medium term.
Well, back to a story about the record loss posted by the central bank in 2022. Join us on Zoom. Hopefully this time the connection will be better. Dr. Benjamin Amwa, Senior Finance Lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. So we're talking about the losses and if they could have been avoided. I just want you to wrap up on your submission to that question. Can you hear me, Dr. Amwa? I don't think he can hear me. You're watching The Marketplace. We'll move on. Quickly fix that. Hopefully we'll have him back. To other stories now, the Project Management Institute of Ghana and the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration have signed an MOU to enhance the practice of project management among young graduates. According to the president of the Project Management Institute, Frank Osu-Asamoah, the collaboration will help address the skills gap needed in industries.
The Memorandum of Understanding signed by the Project Management Institute and the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration is aimed at elevating the standards of project management practice in Ghana. It will also help to instill practical industrial values in students. In an interview with Joy Business, President of the Institute, Frank Osu-Asamoah, said his outfit is committed to bridging the skills gap in the society.
Project Management Institute is also a research-based organization where we don't just come out with reviews of our documents or our material, but we conduct a lot of research. Recently, what we call the talent gap came out that within the next few years, that is by 2030, Africa alone is going to need 25 million project managers. And this is research-based. So everything we do is towards addressing that kind of gap that exists.
Rector of the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, Kwawu Bonso, said the collaboration will help the school to produce students equipped with skills needed by industry.
The direct benefit is the quality of students that we produce. And the quality of students that we produce, not just for us, because the students, when they leave, are not really working for us, but are working for the country. So that we'll have better qualified students. Our students are going to be adequately prepared to go into industry almost immediately after they are done.
The Project Management Institute pledged their continuous support to the school.
All right, Dr. Benjamin Amar joins us on Zoom. Fingers crossed, hopefully this time we have a good connection. Still talking about the record losses by the Bank of Ghana and the question as to whether these losses could have been avoided. You were making a point, and I just wanted you to conclude on that, Dr. Amar.
Okay, yeah. The point was that, it is part of the strategy to finance government activities. And so when the Ministry of Finance issues the bonds or the instruments, the central bank is also invited to participate. That is why over time the central bank heavily invested in these instruments. And it's a strategy, again, to allow funds to go within the circular economy. What do I mean by that? The funds that are paid to the Ministry of Finance is used to undertake projects. And the expectation is that these funds will be paid. So as and when they are paid, the funds then comes to the central bank again. The central bank then purchases the instruments from the treasury. So it moves round on the circle. But then the reality is that in many instances, the funds are not paid by government. In fact, how will you see the central government paying its indebtedness to the central bank? So in the end, realize that the central bank will have indirectly been used to finance government activities, which should not be the case. We should not forget that the central bank is also not a profit-making entity. The central bank was set up to provide some specific activities or functions as per Act 612.
All right. All right, we have
673. It specifies what the central
would have to let Dr. Amar go, not having a good connection to him. This afternoon, you're watching the marketplace. Let's talk tech now. Many users logging on to Twitter found a black X in the corner of their browser lab in place of a little blue bird they were used to seeing. Elon Musk, the tech entrepreneur and CTO of the social media platform, surprised nearly everyone by announcing plans to rebrand Twitter, which he purchased for a highly leveraged $44 billion in October 2022. The company is now called X, and critics have said Elon Musk risks more damage to his business following the rebrand. Joining me to talk about this is Henry Kobler, who is lead for Eyes of Africa. Good to have you on the marketplace. We missed you last week. Great to have you back. The last time we spoke, Twitter was Twitter, but now Twitter is X. And there have been mixed reactions to this move by Elon Musk. What do you think he's trying to do?
Thank you very much. So I think that generally when you get hold of a company, generally you would want to make significant changes. And before you even basically would buy a company, you would basically have a lot of ideas where you want to incorporate into the company. And so looking at what Elon, generally has been up to, he's that aggressive, impulsive leader that basically brings in a lot of innovations on the ground. And so him purchasing Twitter, I don't think that he just purchased it because he thought that it was just a general platform that he wanted to just buy and just run it the way it used to run. And so I think generally most of our conversations we've had about Twitter has always been about aggressive changes which he is deployed into the company. And so for him to relatively just rename the company to be called X, in the tech world, I don't think it's a new thing. Facebook has actually rebranded to Meta. The rebranding basically goes on. But I think that generally you would realize that what Elon is sort of looking forward to is to bring in some level of innovation. He's looking at building a platform not just for tweets, he's looking at impulsive actions in terms of making it a payment platform, in terms of putting in a lot of audio content, a lot of video visualization content, and also putting in some level of blockchain contents as well. And so generally he has a vision where he's sort of putting into, so the whole concept of Twitter, it's coming in as per the original concept, relatively changes now. And so him branding basically to X gives a whole definition to it. It would take time generally when it comes down to rebranding purposes. If you look at billboards and the logos of the bird being used all around, it would take a bit of time. But I think that he's looking at a vision, a more aggressive vision, and I think that it's in place for him.
Well, some have said this rebrand could potentially be a disaster. Is he killing a strong brand, the strong brand that Twitter has built over the years? What are the risks?
Yes, so that could be a lot of people's concept in terms of what he seeks to achieve. But I mean, right from a very developer point and a user point, I think that he's trying to achieve something. Technology grows. We can't always use the same Twitter as it used to be. So if there's a new feature that is released onto Twitter and it makes it more aggressive, makes it more fun, I think that you would basically have some level of influence on non-users coming in. And then I think that the users that basically on would also be calling in for some aggressive changes when it comes down to the usage of technology. And so generally for me, I think that it would not really bring it down. They're already having their user base. The interface has not just changed. It's just a name now. But generally, I think that he'll be releasing in features on the go. And these features are going to be significant to the growth of the tech world. I think that from my point, it wouldn't really kill it. He has his user base. He sort of understand what he bought. He sort of understand why he wouldn't have bought Facebook, but he would have bought Twitter. And so managing to deal with Twitter in itself, I think that comes in with a lot of play. He sort of has a clearer vision. He has a CEO basically now in place to sort of push this vision. And I think that it comes in. The only thing is that he's very impulsive. He doesn't leave chance for you to think for the next change. He just drops the change and he's just on the move. And so very soon, I think that you have some sort of users that are going to like that trend and would always want to go with his trend, where they're expecting very impulsive actions on these platforms which he's building.
Yeah, and companies rebrand all the time. And so why is this a big deal? Because it is Twitter. Why is he getting bad press? It makes you wonder.
So again, if you're looking at Elon generally, his methods are very unconventional. And so generally, a lot of people are very not so comfortable with change. And so you would have the bad press or the backlashes coming in, which is very fair enough. But you would also have quite a number of tech enthusiast people that love that change. Now, again, realize this, that Twitter had specialized users. It's not just for everybody. I mean, if you're looking on phones of people, you realize that the age range where people are so aggressive using Twitter is sort of more of like elitish people that are not so much into pushing a lot of talk content, but want to just make relevant content in there. So this kind of users, again, are also not too used to change because they're so comfortable within the space, okay? And so that's why you basically now have him having some level of backlash. But I think that these kind of users also adapt to the easiness and then the innovations that actually comes on play. And so they might not necessarily be too comfortable with the aggressive changes, but very soon they're going to be okay with the kinds of deployment of features, which is going to make their life easier or sort of make it quite better. I mean, if you look at the streaming service on Twitter, a lot of people have been adaptive to it, right? But you would have realized that feature is coming from Clubhouse, where that audio feature was supposed to now have a blow up when it was during the COVID. But now bringing it in, you would realize that the users of Twitter now are accustomed to audio. So the whole concept of Twitter was not supposed to deal with audio, but now bringing in audio, you realize that quite a lot of it. I mean, Joy, you've been on like a lot of Twitter streaming services content lately. And so you realize that people sort of were accustomed to the change and would love the features it sort of brings on the table.
So quick one, what are the lessons here?
Lessons, I mean, generally just understand your audience and know how you sort of play around them. Being aggressive might not always go with the flow, even if you think that that's the right thing to do. Second is that you sort of also have to understand what exactly you're looking at building and incorporate it in the minds of your users even before they start to think. Users are usually very dictative. They sort of like to push you in a particular way. But again, when you're a leader, you sort of need to know how you want to just direct, especially when you're putting in so much money into companies. And then the third one I would say is that users always would dictate, but as a leader, just know what exactly you put on the table. Make sure that it's relevant, make sure that it's innovative, make sure that it has a future, and that's it.
Thank you so much. Welcome back, Henry Kobler, the lead Eyes of Africa. Appreciate your insights as always. Now, in a bid to foster energy consciousness and empower the youth with valuable knowledge on sustainable energy usage, the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PURC, is undertaking a tariff education program in public universities across the country. The initiative aims to educate students on the complexities of energy tariffs, pricing structures, and the importance of responsible energy consumption. Executive Secretary of the PURC, Dr. Ishmael Aka, says a move by the Commission is to demystify the tariff regime in the country. There's more in this report.
Energy tariffs are a critical component of any nation's energy sector as they directly influence consumer behavior and energy consumption patterns. In Ghana, like many other countries, tariffs play a significant role in determining electricity and water prices for domestic, commercial, and industrial consumers. The PURC's tariff education program seeks to demystify the complexities surrounding tariff structures and empower students to make informed decisions regarding their energy usage. Dr. Ishmael Aka is the Executive Secretary of the PURC.
We have three main reasons. The first one is to explain what we consider in determining the tariff. The second one is to encourage consumers at least to use electricity efficiently. And the third one is to provide a platform for students to also ask questions, engage us, and provide recommendations and suggestions to us. So we came to Cape Coast Technical University today. One of the key things we mentioned was that we have two tariff windows at PURC. We have the major tariff and the quarterly adjustment. So for instance, we take their proposals during the major tariff and we compare the figures in there with their own historical analysis. So we do what we call trend analysis. So last year they bought a transformer, let's say at 2 million. If this year they are making a proposal and they are telling us that the transformer will cost 5 million, we question them, we compare and do other things. We also compare the prices with regional, similar utilities in the region across Africa, so that at least we can have a very good price consumers will not burden consumers. And finally, we also go to the market to do a market survey so that we can compare the prices.
Dr. Aka believes when students are empowered, Ghana's energy consumption space will be the better for it.
So every quarter, what we do is that we compare what we forecasted for 3 years against what is happening in that quarter. So for instance, when we're doing the major tariff review, we said the exchange rate was 5 cedis to $1. But maybe after a quarter, it has moved to 8 cedis to $1. What we do is that we compare what we used and take the difference and either add or subtract from the tariff.
And that's the marketplace. Thanks for watching, everyone. There is more news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. Imperial General Assurance's fastest growing insurance company of the year. Get some more on this story on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. Also, UBA Ghana engages women in financial literacy. Thanks for watching. We'll be back same time tomorrow.